make sure the tech follows along as well. But, g'day, Graham.
Hey, how you doing? It's really cool to be here with Joe Booth. You are the founder, I believe, of the Internet Party in New Zealand.
So I'm the technical director of the Internet Party. I suppose you'd call me the some of the leading sort of guy. I was and still am the party secretary of the Internet Party. So in a formal capacity, I look after the legislative side of the party. At the moment, the Internet Party is deregistered from the New Zealand electoral link. It's a bit of a strategical thing to give me less work for the next few years while we build up our forces ready to take on the 2020 election. But I fulfill the role of CTO or technical director of the Internet Party, pulling together these things and making it all happen. And fantastic.
So, Joe, what got you involved in the Internet Party of New Zealand?
Well, I suppose I've always been on the internet. I'm a bit of a geek. I sort of always interested in what's out there and what's around. And I think it took me a while. I was quite hesitant about joining the Internet Party. All these crazy, activists, all the people changing the world. And I like many things, I stood back for a while to see what would happen. And I think it was after I suppose some of these revelations and the moment of truth, where Kim.com and a few others had, in fact, if you scroll back down to the end of my Twitter account, the Geek Joe, there you'll find one of my first tweets was more or less on that night.
Right.
And I sort of realized that there was a bigger game afoot, and if I wasn't ready to sort of stand up and say, hey, this is what I'm here for, then I might as well just go home. And it was quite disappointing to see what happened with the media, changeover and the reporting on that moment of truth. There was certainly some big revelations that came out, and Snowden and various other things, spoke. So I joined the Internet Party. I think it was my $1.99 in-app purchase with a application. I will do this, signed on the dotted line with my finger and said, I want to be a part of this. But I think what has sustained me throughout this sort of journey is the people I've met along the way. And I suppose Susie would be one of them. So Susie was brought on into the Internet Party to bring it forward into to contest the last New Zealand general election. And I'd always been hovering around on the outside as the party sort of lost hope with not winning in the initial 2014 election. A lot of the paid staff disappeared, but the people who had the passion and wanted to change the world, aka foolish little me, is stuck around. And I was still sticking around 3 or 4 years later when Susie called me and said, you're still interested in doing something with the Internet Party? And so from there, I've been working, enabling a lot of these systems and making it happen for Susie and for the Internet Party. And the Internet Party and our sort of core group were the ones that essentially pulled together the first Reconnect Julian vigil. When he lost his internet connection, a bunch of us said, well, how would we feel if we'd lost our internet connection and lost our ability to communicate? And so it was just that empathy and that feeling of, solidarity with Julian that we wanted to share with the rest of the world, and see what we could do to get a voice out there. And from that, as you can probably read in the blurb of all these videos that you're watching online, Unity for J was born. It was essentially realized that what might separate us is so many things, but what can connect us is this common hope that, and a right to Julian's right to publish, to freedom of the press, to just basic human rights, and the fact that we shouldn't really be, shouldn't have these machinations sort of sitting in behind us, trying to game the game. It should be I'm a believer in a truth-based economy. If you can't tell the truth about something, then there's usually something wrong with it. So yeah, we'll see how that all pans out. I'm still trying to form my own political opinions, and I never got into politics. Ended up being, I think, number one in the recent election, and that that's been an awakening and an enlightening as well. So it's sort of been a progression of getting deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole, but not really. It's more discovering what one voice can do if you stand up and say, hey, we're not going to Susie's message me. If we're not going to stand down, then what can we do? And a 250 million voices that have seen this Unity for J and can share this message is I think a good achievement.
Well, what have you seen as technical director for the Internet Party New Zealand, and being involved in these online vigils that have been going on? I think seems like now about 4 or 5 months. What have you seen in terms of how the those in power are challenging this message, and how this vigil is unifying people?
Well, I suppose I have seen the unity happening where people have essentially put aside their differences, and it's easy to look at the very vocal flame wars and things that happen, and Cassandra was a unfortunate byproduct of some of that that sort of vitriol headed from one half of the movement to the other half of the movement. And I think it serves us no great, it doesn't serve us well if we're too busy fighting ourselves to concentrate on what we're actually here to do. And I think that's where leaving the politics at the door is a great way to approach this. And we've had our sort of online, we call it WikiBees sessions just recently, just 11 hours ago. And I think just realizing that you're amongst a bunch of people which you probably don't actually know their political, gatherings. You just know that they're there for this one cause, to try and stand beside or support Julian in some way.
Right.
So yeah. And in terms of, I suppose the other side of things, where I've seen, I have seen this sort of long reaching arm of various things happen, and it is difficult to be in the technical space and not start to draw conclusions about what is overtly or in the background happening. Just recently, I think we had a few problems. In fact, it was during your interview, wasn't it? With the audio suddenly going all stuttery, so it turned out our Stream PC had a Windows update deployed to it right then and there. And I too have been suffering similar problems with with weird things happening. It usually happens every time we're doing something important, so we don't worry about it too much anymore. It's just part of the course.
Every time you guys are doing something important online that's live streaming, you get some type of technical problem.
Well, no, I mean, not. I mean, I've done other live streams and I've run things, and things never go wrong unless you're essentially standing up for what's right. And so, yeah, I've certainly seen a lot of that. Things, and you know, people can say, hey, you know, it's just because, well, you're suddenly sending it out to a lot more people, but the reality is there's probably only about 1 or 2 internet streams. One's coming out to you and one's coming into me, and that's probably a lot less than when my children get on the internet and start watching YouTubes and streaming games and you name it. So I don't think we're anything special in terms of a technical load or ability. In fact, you know, millions of people stream every time, but every time we seem to get people together and united in this cause, usually something happens, and you get better at dealing with it. And so I think, yeah, we just before we essentially switched to a different PC and had a third one on standby, and we're essentially ready to fail back to the original one. The more this happens, the better we get at managing infrastructure and doing it. So for me, I quite enjoy the challenge. Bring it on.
Well, let me ask you this now: as what do you think people such as yourself that are technical directors of whatever sites or movements or businesses, what do you think people within your field can be doing to help support somebody like Julian Assange, and also how can they help implement change to those in power that are trying to stifle our voices? And, you know, YouTube demonetizes videos of mine on my show, Political Vigilante. They demonetize videos. They throttle. Yeah. I've been at 9,900 subscribers for a month. Before that, I was at 9,700 subscribers for 3 months. There's no way the amount of, I'm releasing anywhere from 10 to 12 videos a week that I should have crossed over 10,000 subscribers 6 months ago. So what do you say to people, or what can people with your profession do?
I think the approach I take is trying to enable people and make them realize that they can achieve a lot more than they are doing. So I'm a great believer in the the latent potential in all of us. I think if we start to get woke or whatever the phrase is, we can achieve a lot more. And from as a person with sort of technical abilities, often that is the thing that's holding a lot of people back. They say, well, I don't know how to stream something out or send a message, or even getting on the internet and sharing a message can be complicated for some people, privacy settings and just generally making it happen. So from my perspective, I think I like to sometimes go by the phrase a network facilitator, making those connections happen and making sure people can talk to each other and share that message, whether it's by connecting random bits of computer together, or whether it's connecting bits of people together. And as Susie's telling us in the chat there, the answer to that is the blockchain. Is that immutable, truth-based ledger where you can only write something down, and once it's there forever. And that might seem like a bad thing, but once you start talking about the fact that you're preserving history, you're talking about truth, then you're writing something down and it can't be altered, and it instantly gets shared out with thousands of people who prove the authenticity of what you've attested to. So I'm saying something and someone else is then saying, yes, I agree that they've said that. They're not saying it's right, which is, as I suppose, where this whole fake news starts to come in. Someone says this is right, and someone else says yeah, what they say. They don't actually attest their own thing. So yeah, there are a bunch of technologies and things that us as technical people can start to bring to the masses. And I must admit, I tried to get us streaming on the Steam blockchain on DLive, DTube, and I suffered the inability to do that. I don't think it's.
Dude, I've been trying to get my show Political Vigilante on. I set up to Steam it. I got a Bitcoin wallet. And I've tried to upload videos to DTube. It won't work.
I think conceivably DTube is going through a bit of a change at the moment with DLive sort of hopping off the Steam chain. Everyone sort of like us have gone, well, we'll go and use our DTube account now. But certainly that way of preserving things, and I'm astounded by how this does work. In my fumbling attempts to get a video saved, I think I uploaded essentially the image for our vigil and put a description and a video, and it earned $15.
Well, I want to suggest
like, there wasn't actually a video,
right? Oh, you've cut out there for a sec.
Yeah, people. Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're back. I want to touch on this though, because
yeah,
you bring up, Susie brings up the blockchain. So I did an interview with Susie for Political Vigilante, and she informed me about the blockchain and cryptocurrency and all that stuff. And I think what would be helpful is content creators such as myself. I'm kind of technically proficient. I mean, I know how to figure this out, but there's so many things now that I could use help with on a technical side. And I'm good at talking on camera. I'm good at connecting the dots. I'm good at doing research. I'm good at doing that stuff. But my skill set is definitely, working 20, 30 years in comedy clubs I didn't develop a lot of technical skills.
Yeah.
That's
exactly right. That's where the people like yourself who are used to talking to people and often us tech geeks sit behind the computers and don't really talk to people, but it's the people that are embracing the technology to continue the message that they're already been saying that probably deserve a lot more of our attention, because they've formed it. And as I said, I'm more going, oh, that's shiny, and that's I'm more running off to find the next shiny thing, whereas a lot more people have done the hard yards and figured out which way the world's up and which way is down, and I've forgotten your question.
No, that was just I was just posing about, and you answered it about how, I guess, well, there is sort of a question, but and I guess we're sort of doing it now, but to get people such as yourself with the tech background and people such as myself who are good, have worked on camera or on stage or whatever, and can getting us together, and forums like this I think are great because it unifies all of us. And I'd like to see more of somebody create. I when I saw Abby Martin on the Jimmy Dore show, because she needed to do a Patreon because they shut down Telesur, where she does her show Empire Files. And I was sitting there thinking, because I've talked to Jimmy about this, and then I've seen other sort of indie media people on YouTube talk about getting demonetized. Could we create our own platform, network, channel that we can all talk and not worry about the Googles and the Facebooks of the world telling us what we can and cannot say and do and how we make our money?
Yeah, so I think that's where this core of the blockchain, that ability to write something down and have it preserved, and not being able to be altered without big red flags coming up. That's where you can start to say, you can attest to these items of value and make money or create value. And that's how when some of these sites like Steam and others are coming up. They're creating that value. They're considering your eyeball to be worth money, and essentially creating that value. And that value, because you've created it, is valuable to other people. So it's not necessarily a cash or something, and it doesn't necessarily initially translate to money, but it's the transfer of value. And I suppose bringing that back locally to something that I'm involved with, time banking, which is essentially the exchange of hours outside of money. I spend an hour fixing your computer, and then I get that hour back for someone to actually go and weed the garden, or look after the kids or paint the house. Exchanging an hour for an hour, and you might say, well, obviously my hour is probably more valuable than someone else, but when it comes down to it, I need someone to weed the garden, and I'd much rather spend my hour on wasting more time on the internet. So if you can sort of see how this exchange of value happens in a real world sense, and you can lock that into technology so that it's preserved and it's not just a casual, I did you a favor, you can do me one back, but it's locked into something that you can then say, I've done these favors, and you can take these favors and you can bring them over here and use them to buy rice or whatever it is you're doing, because the network and the group of people around you have attested to its value. And so those sort of concepts are still, they fundamentally make sense to human beings. And I think the blockchain and other technologies that start to represent that in technology are here. They can be used for good. So yeah, and I suppose coming back around to, it does seem complicated, and many people are like, well, I don't want to have to, having to figure out how to store some magic numbers that are your wallet, and what you do with that and things. I think we're still sort of leading the curve here, and I think it will become a way of life, and it will become easier, and it will become safer. And it will be. It's just you're sort of feeling the brunt of the crest of the wave, I suppose, being pushed by losing one source of money to have to look around. And I think that's where the internet was built on that idea that multiple things could connect, and there was resilience in those multiple connections. And I think there is resilience in those multiple connections, whether it's for people or machines. And so efforts that are there and seek to normalize those connections and make them better are fantastic and should be supported in my eyes. I think there's efforts. I think Tim Berners-Lee's been looking into this this essentially using the blockchain to preserve socially linked data. So you can say, I don't know, your little message that you've just sent out, your tweet, can be preserved, and then you can control that bit of information and say that I've sent this out into the ether, and only this kind of person can see it, and these kind of people can't. And that's where you can start to get a message that isn't subject to censorship, it isn't subject to corruption, and you can just send the message out, and the people that you don't want to see it can't see it. Cryptography and all the rest of it in there. But I mean, yes, it's always a game, and you can resist. Yes, you can resist the hiding of the truth, but I think the best solution is just to, as I say, shine a bit more light around, come up with more truth and more light, and shine it around, and you soon find things scurry back into their dark corners, because it is too difficult to deal with a bunch of people who have realised what they can do. And I think each one of us needs to come to that realisation of what we can do, to whether it's stand beside Julian or just stand up for what's right.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's, one of the things that I believe those in power try to convince us is that you're just one little person. There's nothing for you to do. So just, toe the line and do what we tell you to do. And I think so many people, if they realize there's a little thing or two they could do in their lives to help make things better, to help shine light on the injustices that are happening. And you don't have to, lead a 10,000 person march to do so, or have a big platform or whatever. There's little things you can do. And I always say that on my show, Political Vigilante. I always say you're all political vigilantes, and there's some things you can do to change your local environment, your local government. Get vote for progressives or whatever on your school board. Get involved. Try to get your little town to divest from any of the big corporations or the big banks. I mean, there's a movement here in Los Angeles to get a publicly owned bank. The North Dakota has the only publicly owned bank, and it is 100 years old. It's fantastic. And so I think little things like that, you're like, oh, I live in a little rural little town. I live out in the country. Well, get wind.
And it is just that one extra connection, one little more message of hope, or one message to stand up when you are about to be trodden down that little bit forward, is all that you really can ask for, to make that one choice the right way or the wrong way. So yeah, well, it's always the way.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think is there someone else lining up?
Well, I suppose I'm still in charge of this beast. In fact, my phone is, let him in. She says, who is it? All right, I'll catch it. I think, is it a Russian bot? No. It must be,
there's a Russian bot attacking us, probably.
Welcome along, Ian.
Hiya.
Hey, I'm sorry. I just realised that my phone was host of this whole endeavour, and I'm I was waiting for someone else to do it. So welcome along.
All right. Well, I think then, Joe, I'm going to step off, right?
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Yeah. Welcome to stick around in the Zoom and keep an eye on us. But yeah. I think that's the way. I think the schedule, which I had over here, says something along those lines. So, all right, well, Ian, you're now the guest, and I'm the interviewer. That's thank you very much, Graham.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
great talking with you.
At the Geek Joe, and please go to GrahamElwood.com to check out everything that I'm doing. I appreciate it.